Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We're in the book of Acts of the Apostles, chapter 7, verses 17 through 43. Now, Stephen has been seized by the Jewish authorities. He's been brought to trial before the Sanhedrin, and he's speaking to them. He started off by telling the story of the patriarchs of Abraham and Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, and how God had been faithful to them. And now he begins to tell the story of the Exodus, the story of Moses, and how the Jewish people who were living in Egypt had flourished, but then a new Pharaoh arose and who saw them as a threat to his power, and he forces them to kill their male newborn sons. And Moses is born, but he's hidden, and he's a special child. He is raised in the Egyptian court by one of the princesses and is wise in all their ways, Stephen says. And he also was powerful in speech and action. And God raises him up to lead the people to be deliverers. But at first, Moses doesn't understand this. He does it on his own terms. He sees an Egyptian abusing a Jewish man, and he ends up killing that man. Now, later, he encounters a couple of Israelites who are quarreling with each other, and he tries to reconcile them, and they reject him and say, well, call him a murderer for what he did. And so he went into the desert for 40 years. And so he was 40 when he left. He's there another 40 years when he encounters the burning bush, and God calls him forward, and he says, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm the God of the covenant. And Moses, it said, trembled with fear. And the Lord says to Moses, I am sending you as a deliverer for my people. So come now, I'm sending you back to Egypt. So he goes. And then it says in verse 35, this same Moses who was called by God, they rejected. And they said, who made you ruler over us? Well, as Stephen says, God himself did. God called him to be their deliverer. And it reminds us, in many ways, Stephen is trying to call to mind that it's the same is true for Jesus. We rejected the one that God himself sent to us to be our deliverer. And even though it said Moses performed wonders and signs in their midst, and again, Jesus performed even greater signs. After all, he died on the cross and was raised from the dead. And then it says, verse 37, this Moses told you that God would raise up for you a prophet like him who would be even greater. And that, he, as Stephen said, he passed on a living word from God to us. And then verse 39, but our ancestors refused to believe. And he says, in their hearts, they turned back to Egypt. In other words, they turned back to wanting to be slaves. And they told Aaron, we want you to make us idols. We want to worship the gods that came before. And so it said God turned them back to their idol worship. And he says in verse 43, you've taken up the tabernacle of Molech, a god that demanded they kill their infant children, the star of your god Rapha, you all these idols. And he's telling them this story because God has once again sent them a deliverer, and the people have rejected the deliverer and broken the covenant with God. And the thing for us to think about is that we're called to live life forward by understanding it backward. Well, have a blessed day.